Starting up a business is hard, really, really hard. Your chances of failure are high. You're likely to lose both your sleep and your hair. But luckily for you, you're not alone. Welcome to ET Startup School, your step-by-step guide to starting, building and consolidating your startup business idea. Your teachers at the ET Startup School will be some of India's best-known entrepreneurs, VCs and domain experts. So grab a notebook, pay close attention. School is about to start. Today's class at ET Startup School is called When and How Should I Talk to a VC? Your teacher is Karthik Reddy, co-founder of Blume Ventures. Karthik co-founded Blume with Sanjay Nath in the year 2011. Since then, Blume has invested in over 100 companies, both B2B and B2C. Companies like Exotel, Unacademy, Healthifyme and Railyatri. And before becoming a venture capitalist, Karthik worked at companies like American Express, Reuters and the Times of India. So if you're confused about when and how to talk to a VC, here's Karthik Reddy to the rescue. Karthik Reddy, co-founder Blume Ventures, welcome to ET Startup School. Today's episode is called How and When Do I Talk to a VC? So let's get directly to the heart of the matter. When's the right time to talk to a VC like Blume?
Blume is an early stage VC, Suresh, where we do more like seed and pre-series A. So if you're a seed stage entrepreneur, then you're essentially telling us or selling us a story which essentially shows how large the opportunity can be and why you're the best team equipped to do it. There's no sort of precondition apart from your ability to paint the big picture and sell a big vision to a VC, much like Blume. A pre-A story is a little different, which means that we liked a particular space, but we were underconfident around the prior opportunities or the timing of that. And you believed that you've hit product market fit out of the door in terms of seeing early traction. And we want to catch it before we miss it altogether. So that's our entry point at Blume Ventures. And basically, if you're in one of these two buckets is when you have the highest chance of impressing us. That said, I think whenever you get a high quality introduction to a VC, the idea is not to pitch as much as get familiar with what the VC is looking for, take feedback, improve on what suggestions you've gotten, because all of that is value that a VC gives before you go back to the next storyteller. A lot of entrepreneurs have told me they've learned from these conversations and come back much stronger when they have pitched a second or third time. So no magic happens in the first meeting, and you need to approach the meeting in that fashion. Tell the story, not get into pitch mode necessarily in the very first call.
All right, so tell the story. That's the takeaway from that answer. Karthik, how long should I have run my business? How many days, weeks, or months should I have ideally run my business, or years, before I approach you for either pre-seed or seed funding?
See, pre-seed seed by definition is, when the idea is formulated strongly enough that it looks like a compelling story. So sometimes that takes years, like a good painting or a good book that you're writing, and in the making. But what the ingredients that one wants to see is that you've thought the idea through for playing a very, very long-term game with both the quality of the problem that you've chosen and the quality of the team that you're putting together. So if those are not in place, then it's a waste whether you've spent 2 years or 2 weeks or 2 days. And that's, again, as I said, seed or pre-seed, right? When you come and tell me, no, I know exactly what I've figured out, and I know this can scale 100 times, that this has got to be well defined. What is the product market fit and what traction you've achieved? And I then, as a VC, will start looking for anecdotes on why your customer loves you or loves the solution that you're building for them. And therefore, it becomes important to assess traction, not just the story. So these are two slightly different buckets, but they're a continuum on the risk curve, right? And so you have to be clear on which VC likes what and why you're pitching them at that point in time. So for us, we're open to someone who's, as I said, literally put out the first PowerPoint deck and then meeting me on the second day. However, that thought should have crystallized over probably 2 months, 2 quarters, 2 years of thinking. The longer it is, I feel the more solid the long-term performance of that team and idea is, to be honest.
Karthik, as an entrepreneur, how do I know which VC does what? There's so many different VCs in the market and so many different market sectors. How do I understand what each different VC specialty actually is?
No, fantastic question, which is, I feel, where most founders flail and succumb to the temptation of just pitching anyone who has money. And that's actually a bad idea. This might have been true 10 years ago. Most VCs in most stages were generalists because opportunities were few, and the clarity on what opportunity might become a billion-dollar company was not very easy to ascertain. Then you started seeing specialists coming both from the industry and developing their own specialization on the back of hits and victories that they've had in their spaces. So if you look at Shekhar Kirani, who was awarded the Midas Touch Award in the ET Startup Awards just recently, he's a great example of someone who is specialized from the get-go. So, when he joined Axel 12 years ago, he was doing SaaS, and Freshworks was his first investment. And today he's being rewarded for that consistency of knowing and performing on the SaaS sector very, very deeply, right? Similarly, in our team, that would be a subunit under Sanjay, right? So there's no point, trying to work really hard in pitching the wrong team member your idea when they don't have the depth of knowledge to be able to discern whether you are better or worse than 20 other SaaS companies they met this month, right? So yes, it's not impossible that I fall in love with the founder and say, hey, go along and meet Sanjay. We do that a lot. When we get high quality referrals, we pass it on to each other, right? But ideally, you should do a little bit of homework on, trying to assess in the space that you're pitching in your industry subsector, who are the VCs who've built a brand, both at a firm level and at an individual level. The individual level is as important. And then, thankfully, the industry has matured now significantly over the last 12, 15 years, that it's not down to not every entrepreneur needs to rush to meet Shekhar. In fact, you shouldn't meet him on the first meeting. You should refine your pitch by meeting his understudy in the firm, right? And get to know from someone who won't judge you harshly, because you only get one shot with a Shekhar or a Sanjay in my team, right? You don't impress them in the first meeting, you're in trouble. So basically, you would focus on getting a more consultative dialogue going with someone who's known to be from a team that is very smart in this sector, and then use that dialogue to refine your story and your pitch and what the VC is looking for, and then go and target half a dozen to a dozen people in that space. That's it. There's no point speaking to the 35th one, right? Because essentially at a particular stage in a particular sector, I would assume that we have depth to maybe speak to 8 to 12 quality people. And that's what I would focus on.
Karthik, at Blume, you probably get dozens of entrepreneurs pitching you every month. How do you filter these requests? How do you know who to listen to, who not to listen to? Your time is limited as well.
I'm going to be blunt here. The reality of our life, at least, is now we've moved to, you're absolutely right, it's dozens. It's about 4 to 5 to 6 dozen a week sometimes. And therefore, we're looking at an annualized count of 2,500 to 3,500. About maybe 20-30% of them will be outbound, where we have gone basis our sector interest and gone and met accelerators and incubators and seen what's going on. But the rest of them are actually inbound, right? And so we are discerning to the extent that now we think we've grown up enough, we've built a network enough that the person referring it to us is very conscious of who we are, how well they know us, and is therefore referring high quality founders. So there is a little bit of a give and take in terms of brand perception on both directions. So somebody will not want to send you crappy deals and sort of diminish their brand in your eyes. So they therefore also work hard in sending who they think are interesting at least. They might not have invested in them, they might not have judged them, but they feel like, hey, this person might be interesting to Blume. So let me see if I can co-invest with them or get brownie points for sharing something with them. Or I just feel like out of goodwill, Blume is the best house to invest in them. So I think when people do that, then you get the best deal flow. And tragically, for folks who don't choose that option, it means that you're not sort of well connected in terms of network effects to us. And that makes you fall in the 75% of the pitches who don't get much attention, to be honest. So you'll only get attention there if we have a strong thesis and we are looking very keenly to invest in that space, then we will perk up and take every one of those pitches. But if it's not on top of our radar for this year, then we'll just park it unless you've come through a very strong reference. So we have internal SLAs to turn around every referred pitch within a week to 10 days. So that's the quality check that we put, but we also try to stick to sort of a quality measure in terms of how quickly we can get back and say yes or no and give feedback and be done with it, and not keep entrepreneurs lingering, because that's the one thing entrepreneurs hate.
So let's assume that as an entrepreneur, I've networked, somebody that you trust has referred me to you. I get my chance to pitch to you. Would you be impressed that I've used my own money, or I've taken money from family, friends, and fools, as it were? Does that necessarily impress a VC like you, Karthik?
Friends, family, I would discount a little. I think that means you're just loved by your friends and family, which is good. It's a character signaling trait, and so people trust you with their money. At least trust your ability to. It's not a guaranteed return scheme, though. Unfortunately, right? Entrepreneurship is tough, and startups with high risk ideas are even tougher. So I don't think they expect you to necessarily deliver miracles. They all dream. It's like a lottery. So that's the friends and family round. So, whereas it's a little bit of a character signaling that they think that you are capable and passionate enough to follow through with what you pitched them. That's what they're betting on. The next level interesting, I would argue, is people you've worked with, right? People who have actually judged you in a market, in a daily job, right? So, if your bosses, if your boss's firm, or if the firm that you worked in rather, they all tend to sort of find ways to back you, then that's very, very compelling. That means they've seen you at work, they've seen you 18 hours a day, 12 hours a day sometimes, and say that this person is super hardworking. They're going to go out there and try and achieve something. So there are value virtue markers. I don't think they're necessarily, they're not experts in the space. So it's not a validation that that kind of capital is necessarily proof that you will succeed. Neither, for that matter, is a venture capitalist necessarily, right? I mean, you have a Zoho, which has been built bootstrapped. Every time ET does an award for bootstrap founders, which means there are people who go against these odds and still deliver. So I think they're all virtue markers. You're eventually looking from a first principle lens, but much like a admission into a US MBA college, you're looking at 10 traits. You're not looking at one trait, and this adds positively to your resume and your ability to convince others, put your own skin in the game. These are all phenomenally positive things to see. If you come without any of that and you're lazy and assume that the venture capitalist alone will give you that capital, I think that's lazy fundraising, if you ask me.
So, Karthik, what I'm hearing from you is that entrepreneurs, A, need to run their business, and B, also need to cultivate a network of people, perhaps angels, perhaps other entrepreneurs, other investors, who can sort of give them a positive referral if required. Should I spend, say, 30% of my time or 20% of my time networking if I'm an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it's important for at least the CEO of a founding team. So I wouldn't say that everybody in the founding team needs to do it, right? It depends on the tight knit nature of a founding team. So if they're very knit and you trust one person to be your leader and that CEO is doing it, that's more than enough. But I feel like a CEO who shirks that and says, I'm a tech guy, I will hide in a hole when I want to, I'll surface only when I want to connect to people. I think they're misreading the cues that that's not how the world is built. The world is built because of trust and watching you over successive interactions over a period of time, not by judging you on a singular pitch, right, or a singular interaction. Which means it's not just about investors. We're talking about customers. We're talking about employees, key employees. You have to inspire a whole bunch of people, and that doesn't happen. It's not about networking for the sake of as much, Suresh. I'm not phenomenal at networking as much as I enjoy having deep, meaningful conversations, one-on-one, two-on-one, with as many people as possible. Right? That's where I think I leave an impact. I'm terrible in a networking conversation. Let's say. So it's about you being able to identify, what is important to you. If you like those deep conversations, go and do 5 of them in a week, right? You don't have to go to a networking event per se. But I think there's far more value in that versus somebody else who, by the nature of their own DNA and the business that they're going to venture into, actually need networking to be a core trait. But broadly, it doesn't matter how you win these folks over. Personal style should not be confused with formulas and rules, right? I think you should play to your strengths, and each entrepreneur has their own strengths. But being a CEO and shirking away from the idea that you will not be a people person is just, it's like an ostrich putting its head into the sand equivalent. I think you shouldn't be CEO then. You should turn over your position and go find yourself a co-founder who can do
That's
this.
not a job for introverts, being a CEO. All right, Karthik, next question. I'm not an entrepreneur myself, but I do keep hearing of people who say, oh, that's a lifestyle business. We can't invest in it. But that is an investable business and we can invest in it. How do I tell if I'm in a lifestyle business or an investable business?
No. So both are investable. So the jargon is slightly off, I think. What the investable should have had a prefix. It should be a VC investable business or a
Okay.
lifestyle business. Meaning the institutional capital chases a certain scale and size, which is sometimes inconceivable to the early young entrepreneur, or for that matter, I would argue for 95% of entrepreneurs. Not because they're less capable or less ambitious. It's just that they don't. It's a rules of engagement. It's a rules of the game, right? VCs have to take large amounts of money, give you large amounts of money, want you to win a category and become $1 billion company. If you don't follow a bunch of those ingredients, VC says this is not worth my time because I'm playing for only those bets, right? I have no interest in seeing $1 million become $5 billion. So that's a lifestyleish business outcome, right? And so there are plenty of investors, angels, family, friends, etc., who have supported such businesses and done well. The problem is they're all high risk when they enter at early stage. So your success ratio doesn't go up just because you're thoughtful about one or the other. One, you're chasing high risk, large scale bets, and one you're chasing with smaller money, high risk, smaller bets, right? So there also 1 of 10 have to work for your 1 crore diversified angel portfolio to return 3 crores. And here also you have to have one unicorn which pays off for all your sins and delivers $300 million on a $100 million fund, right? It's just the size of opportunity which one chases. The other thing about lifestyle businesses are, I think you don't need to have compulsions of going public or getting sold at multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. You're okay with the cash flows and the lifestyle it affords you because you've turned profitable, you don't have too many institutional stakeholders, and therefore you can pay yourself a bigger dividend or a bigger salary. And therefore, people say it's a lifestyle business, right? And so there's no harm in it at all. I think 99% of entrepreneurship is actually lifestyle oriented. Nobody builds to like go big, go home on a daily basis, right? It's a very incremental basis. Some entrepreneurs discover that about themselves 10 years into the journey. And then you will see that 90% of the value they created was between years 10 and years 20. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for that entrepreneur to know for a fact that they should have taken venture money in year one is very difficult to know. So I would feel the what you see in the newspapers is only 1% of entrepreneurship.
Why are VCs only interested in billion-dollar businesses? What happens to the 100, 200, 300, $500 million businesses? Those could, in fact, provide you, say, a 5x return or a 10x return on your investment.
No, everyone's greedy for size. We are guilty of that as well. We are going to, we were at 100 million, we're going to cross 200 million in this fund. So when we cross those sizes, what happens is the multiple of money that you have to generate is exactly the same, meaning the cost of capital is the same. So if you return $300-400 million on $100 million, generating 25% compounded IRR, by raising 200 million, you've just compounded your problem further. You have to generate 800 million to $1 billion now. That's non-trivial. So what happens is either you stay an angel investor or a cute little niche fund, which is a lifestyle business of its own kind in the fund industry. Right? So that's the equivalent of a lifestyle business in the fund management industry, where you and one other person like to sit in a corner, not institutionalize, raise $15-20 million and do exactly what you said. Invest in companies that can generate $100 million outcomes and you're perfectly fine. I, on the other hand, am deterministically being a little greedy in institutionalizing and becoming a very large fund. So then I have to cater to not just my needs, but now build an organization and cater to all of their aspirations and needs, right? So they're actually running the equivalent of 50 to 60 to $100 million funds underneath this structure at each partner level. When you want to generate those $1 billion in gross outcome, a $1 billion gross outcome does not get built up by unfortunately adding 20, 30, $40 million. It only gets built by adding up 100, 200, $300 million. And you'll say, no, you can democratize returns and generate that out of every outcome. That's not possible in early stage investing. There are more chances that 60%, 70% of your outcomes will middle or fail. I'm not saying all will go to zero, but I'm just saying middle, fail, or relatively give your capital back. Whereas only 10, 20, 30% of your outcomes will give you significant multiples or grand 100x multiples. And that's what everybody's playing for. You don't know which will become that. And that's why you make 30, 35, 40 bets in a cycle, hoping that, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 deliver that. but everyone is played with the same intent. So the starting point is every IC, everybody is dreaming of or every lead investor is dreaming of a unicorn. This is specific to large and institutionalized funds. It's not necessarily true of, and that's why angels, family, friends, etc., fuel a lot of the early stage ecosystem because they do not have such compulsions.
Yeah, so the angel investors are supposed to be angelic and they love you and give you hugs and all that. Does that mean that venture capitalists are a bit demonic? Should entrepreneurs be a little wary of venture capitalists?
No, I think you'll find flavors of both in both camps. So I think it's personas. It's not necessarily firms. Firm culture is, of course, relatively uniform because leadership in each firm works towards that. Similarly, in angels, there are people who are investors. They qualify as angels by virtue of the risk they take at the stage at which they take that risk, not because they actually walk around with angel halos around their head. I think the fact that they take that risk that early, they're termed as angels. Some of them can also be demonic, and
So
similarly, that
don't let
holds
the word
true of.
angel misguide you if you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. It's not somebody who's necessarily angelic.
And then amongst VCs, I think every VC investor has to fight for that brand, has to make it apparent by way of actually behaving when rubber hits the road, on the fact that they were fair to entrepreneurs, they did the right thing for the company, they did the right thing for the entrepreneurs, and therefore turn out to be either angelic or demonic according to their behavior. And that takes 5, 7, 10 years to demonstrate at scale. So, it's not about doing it in one company and not doing it in the other 8 or 10. And that applies for both categories of investors. Your behavior has to be sort of consistent across all 8 out of 10 of your assets for it to become a systemic behavior and a culture in the firm. And that's what most good VCs will try and do. I'm not going to judge who's who in that from the outside. But I can only say that we try hard to sit in that camp where we're as good, if not better, than most angels.
Karthik, we've all heard of the urban legend of the elevator pitch, that you need to be able to pitch your business in 90 seconds or less, the time of an elevator ride. Have you actually been pitched in an elevator? Has it actually happened to you?
Yeah, it happens. It happens. I would say car rides more than elevator rides. I think I can count off half a dozen folks who have won me over on a car ride to Bangalore airport in traffic, and I've taken full
Oh, that's a
advantage of
long
the
ride
1 hour
anyway.
pitch.
Yeah.
So that's a long ass ride. Yeah. So basically, I think it's more realistic in a car ride. Elevator pitch is tougher, but there is virtue in the statement that you got to be ready to elevator pitch, because a lot of pitching, a lot of relationship building, as the axiom goes, is to pitch well enough to get the next meeting. That's it. So if you are given an opportunity, you can't complain whether you're in a toilet stall, or to be crude about it, or you're whether in an elevator ride or whether you're in a cab ride. You got a chance to pitch. Your job is to essentially see whether you can convert that to a meeting. And that meeting can become a 1 hour meeting or a 30-minute meeting, right? And your job is to win that ability to make the story tell as pithy as an elevator pitch is an absolute genius trait to have. Because if you confuse the hell out of the investor in those 30 seconds, you might be doing more damage than ever wishing for an elevator ride, right? And so you better be careful what you wish for. And when you get that opportunity, your job is to convert that. And I have my own stories. I converted one of the Infosys founders in a similar situation. The steps of the hotel to opening his car door is where I got the next
Oh, that's
meeting
impressive.
with his office.
Okay,
Yeah,
so then
yeah.
here's the next question. So if an entrepreneur gets a car ride with you from Bangalore airport to the city, they have so many things to tell you. I want to pitch you the opportunity. I want to pitch you my company. I want to pitch you my team. I want to pitch you my numbers. I want to pitch you my product market fit. I want to tell you about how much I've raised from family, friends, and fools. I want to tell you 100 things. You said earlier that pitch me the big story, the vision. How does an entrepreneur actually pitch you this big story in a way that you haven't heard it before?
I'm not worried about whether I've heard it before or not. I think you're right. That's an interesting point. That are you differentiated enough? Why is your story different from the 100 other stories that
Yeah.
Karthik is listening to? But I think the question is more around: can you convince me why you're chasing a particular problem area? In fact, my advice piece that I would give in my punchline would be that convince me that you're chasing this for the right reasons. You're trying to solve this problem for the right reasons. And when you do that, I think even 70% of your ability to build great team. Of course, that addresses the customer problem. That means your customer should be delighted with you because you do such a good job of solving that problem. But also, I think it manifests itself in the way you hire, the way you actually talk to your future employees, and the way you're able to sell down mission, because you can't do all this alone, even if you're a superhero, right? That means you have to have 10 people spewing the mission. And therefore, the root cause of why you're chasing this becomes very, very important. It can't be, chalo yaar, gap hai, ye acha opportunity hai, wo hamare classmate bhi kar raha hai ye, so we should also go and we should also be cool entrepreneurs. Those are disasters. They'll never end well. You'll have co-founder fights in like 6 months, right? Because people have joined for all the wrong reasons. And people underestimate people think, oh, you're gyan de raha hai. But basically, eventually, if you look at the winning stories, they're replete with these kind of examples woven into the fabric of the org. And that's what I want to listen to. I want to hear, why are you selling me, this idea? So people come and give me market gyan after hearing 300 pitches in a year and that many over 12 years. If I don't have a market estimate of what you're selling me, then there's a problem, right? You're pitching to the wrong VC. You can convince me on market. Very rare that you can convince me I should play it because I heard about market opportunity from you. That's my job as a VC. But within that, why you would win relative to 20 other guys trying this or 20 other girls trying this is important for me to hear. So nuances on why you would win, what's your differentiator, what are the nuanced behaviors that you've observed, that give me an aha moment, are very important. And you don't get that very often, sadly, which is why a lot of stuff doesn't get funded too.
Karthik, in your life, you've seen thousands of presentations, PowerPoint, keynote, pitch decks. As an entrepreneur, can you give me a simple set of do's and don'ts for pitch decks? What should it have and what should it not have? I have a meeting with you and your co-founder. I have both of you for 1 hour locked in a room or 30 minutes locked in a room. And I have, of course, the dreaded PowerPoint presentation. What should it
So
be?
I'll let the entrepreneurs on to a secret that, not widely known about how Blume functions. We expect the pitch to last not more than 20 minutes or 25 minutes to convince me on whether I should take a next meeting or not. So let me put it that way. So there's no 1 hour. There's 20, 25 minutes for you to impress me. And of that, you want to keep half of it for interactive, Q&A and have a chance to wow the VC on what interests them, what are their key questions. So which means 12 and a half minutes, which goes back to the philosophical idea of an elevator pitch. It's not 30 seconds as much as maybe say 10, 12 minutes. But if in those 10, 12 minutes, what can you convey, right? You want to convey the backstory. Why did this come about as an obsession for you to chase as an entrepreneur? B, how did you piece together and assemble the early set of, I have this analogy that there's set of entrepreneurs in that founding team look like an Avengers subunit, right? So how did the Avengers subunit come together? Why are they all motivated to solve it as well? Not just because they're your buddies, right? They don't, or not because they're hired guns. They basically come because they're as passionate for that cause. So I want to know how the team came together, and I want to know who's calling the shots, who are the leaders in this team, and what roles they will play. Can you anticipate how that will be played out 4-5 years from now? And then who's backed you and who's supported you? So basically, if you give me these ingredients, I'm very quickly able to distill whether you've done a good job in selling this story to not just me, but to others. And then in the next step as well, the challenge becomes even more daunting. So I'm also gauging that. I'm gauging, can this person successively go and sell this narrative for round after round after round until they get to the end goal, not simply just convince me, right? And so these are the ingredients I'm looking for. So it should be crisp. 5-7 slides should convey 90% of the meat. Everything else is supporting evidence.
Okay, let's assume I have a successful or semi-successful meeting with you. As an entrepreneur, what do I need to know about term sheets and due diligence? What are you going to do? Are you going to go into my personal life and scan every shady thing I've done?
Ideally, yes, but it's very difficult to. So we, in the sense that, again, these are character references which don't, by the time you're in mid-20s, you're very, very almost immutable in terms of how your character can change in the future. So there are enough reference points even as early as that. I don't think anyone is suspecting or acting on the idea, especially if you're working off referred pitches, that there are a lot of skeletons in the closet in the criminal sense. But in the unconventional sense that, will you make a great entrepreneur or not? There are little breadcrumbs that you drop all along the way through your prior experiences, whether it's college classmates or workers or etc., co-workers. And so idea is to try and your ex-bosses, etc. So much like you're doing an assessment around, validating whether these people will stand up for you and endorse you is something we are looking for, I would guess, in terms of broader diligence. Market, we might be in doubts, and that's on us to be able to go and get conviction on market. It's not necessarily the founder's conviction, which alone will sway us. And then legal and this and paperwork and secretarial stuff. It gives you a sense of how much importance the founder places on it. Unfortunately, even the best of founders outside of maybe 10-20% wouldn't rate better than a 5 on 10 on that when we invest. But we see ourselves as partners, and we try to educate them on fixing it rather than running away from that problem.
Last serious question in this interview before I ask you a personal question. At Blume, do you invest in the opportunity, the company, or the founder, or all three?
The opportunity and the founder, right? The company is like yet getting shaped in that sense. So I think the opportunity solves for a lot of issues around what scale you can build to, right? And then the founder / their initial team basically has to be able to build the company irrespective of what challenges come. So even after 8-10 years, we see founder split ups. We see founder split ups after 8-10 months. Though we love the idea of like, oh, there should be 3 founders, 2 founders, 4 founders. Reality is there's one CEO founder, and you want to really get a deeper understanding of that CEO founder. You don't want them to be ruthless, but you want them to be objective, and you want them to be capable of continuously being, Captain India, for the lack of a better analogy, and continue to assemble the best teams of Avengers for different missions, right? So the company's journey just it's not what it was at pre-Series A, is not what it is at IPO. So if you look at a Zomato journey, which is now sort of semi-complete in a post-IPO avatar, it's gone through like 10 changes, right? And so people are betting on Dipinder's capability and the opportunity in some sense to continuously steer that ship. The day, if somebody loses confidence on the CEO, then it's time to sort of pack up and sell the company, right? And so that's how the journey goes in the long term. So you work backwards. You see where these experiences have led you, and then you work backward and try to get better and better at iterating these ingredients when you're starting the journey. That's been our experience, at least. But what would we know? We're 12 years old. It's a 50-year business in some sense of venture capital.
Okay, Karthik Reddy, final question. At a personal level, why do you do what you do? Is it because you want to be a millionaire? You want to be really powerful? You want to be really famous? What drives you?
See, the job title has the word capital in it. So you can't escape the idea that we are capitalists at the core, right? So you're putting money to make money. So let's get that out of the way, right? And so if you are getting more ambitious around it, then you're drawing both internal talent and external investors who expect you to do this better and better. Otherwise, they're not joining you for a social cause. That said, I think the choice of what we do and how we grew up as a firm, we started with a 100 crore Indian rupee fund, and now we'll be upwards of 1,500 crores. But we did that and we continue, despite this 15x scaling of a fund, we continue to focus only on seed and pre-series A. So, which I think explains the DNA of what I do as one of the leaders of the firm and why Blume does what it does. I think we just love the idea of being able to shape a little bit of the future. Basically, that comes in 2 parts. Essentially, causes, technologies, business areas, improvements that are close to your heart. So, in my first ever newsletter or second newsletter, I think I used to have a sort of a way of doing this, which has got lost down the years. I used to start with one, very, very famous quote. And I was idealistic enough to put Gandhiji's quote out there and say, be the fund the change that you want to see in the world. Not be the change, but fund the change. Right? So essentially, I do think fundamentally we allow each person on the team to translate that into their core belief and investing activity. So that's part A. And part B, we truly think venture at this early stage allows you to shape entrepreneurship as well. What should conscious capitalism, what should, whether it's diversity, whether it is ESG, all of these elements are terms that are coming into popular jargon today, but fundamentally all driven by few sutradhars in the firm, right? And those folks have to be taught this in kindergarten, not in 12th grade. Then you allow yourself to build a very different set of entrepreneurs for this country, as opposed to what you see, and that percolates. Because if you build that culturally across hundreds of startups, then everybody who works in those startups in the future, wherever they go and work, will then propagate that same form of entrepreneurship and culture. So that's a fascinating side effect of, both these are side effects of the fact that you're at the end of the day a money manager and you manage capital to return X on 5X on X.
But I love the philosophical take of fund the change that you want to see. So Karthik Reddy of Blume Ventures, thank you for talking to us at ET Startup School.
My pleasure. Anything that I can do to help a few entrepreneurs change their perspective and change the world is always an opportunity I take on. So thank you for the opportunity.
So that brings us to almost the end of today's class at ET Startup School. If you'd like to be a good student, check out and do the homework assignment in the show notes. If you like the podcast, share it with family, friends, even your frenemies. ET Startup School is produced by Animesh Das with inputs from Anupriya Nair, Erika D'Souza, Arijit Burman, Shilpa Sharma, Harish Chawla, Govind Mundra and Vishal Bhandari. ET Startup School is available on economictimes.com and ET Play, as well as Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn and Google Podcasts.